Coach,
What's going on? How are you?
I'm good, man. How about you? It's been a while.
I know, man. It's been a really long time. And, listen, dude, I was extremely honored that you reached out, man. I'm excited to talk to you today.
Of course. Hey, what are you doing up in Columbia, South Carolina?
So, like I had mentioned, via text, I'm working with the
Mhm.
Dodgers now. And
Right.
so I'm doing the player development part and the scouting part. And a lot of my spring has been spent on the East Coast,
Mhm.
covering South Carolina, North Carolina, part of Georgia, in preparation for the Major League Baseball draft. And so I've been here all spring, back and forth, from the Carolinas and Georgia to home and back. And so I'm here tonight to see South Carolina and LSU play.
Mhm.
And then Saturday, I'll drive over to the Raleigh-Durham area and catch NC State and Stanford, Duke and Georgia Tech. So just watching games, evaluating players, and trying to find the right guys for the Dodgers.
So, Coach, this is my co-host Heath Hopkins.
Coach, how are you?
Heath, what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm doing all right, Coach. We briefly met. I don't expect you to remember it, but it was your first game at State. It was after the game.
Okay.
And Gary Blaylock, Brent Blaylock's father, and I played baseball with and against each other growing up.
Sure.
And I was talking to Gary. I hadn't seen him in years. And I was walking away, and he was talking to me. And I ran an off-tackle slant and put my shoulder right in your sternum. And you were so gracious and nice. I didn't mean to hit you hard.
That's okay, man. I probably felt it for a few days,
But I sat there, and I didn't know who I hit, and I immediately grabbed you. I was like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And then you patted me on the back like, "I am fine." And I kind of looked at you, and I was like, "I just ran over Coach." But okay.
That's great, man. That's a great story.
So, but Coach, we've had a lot of people on our show, and we're not going to bring up anything negative. We had Hugh Freeze. We've had Hugh Freeze on several times.
Perfect.
And we're not going to bring up anything. If we ask any question about anything and you don't want to answer it, I doubt I ask you what your favorite steakhouse is, and you're like, "Hey, I'm vegan. I don't want to talk about that."
Yeah, sure.
We'll easily take that out. But we're not gotcha media. We're here about storytelling.
Look,
and we want you to tell your story.
Fellas, listen. Obviously, I was so incredibly disappointed. With the way it ended at Mississippi State. And, I feel terrible. I let so many people down and pull for Mississippi State every day. And, but yeah, I don't want to necessarily get into the details. But, listen, if we want to talk about, my time at Mississippi State and our 2017 team that, made it to a super regional and overachieved, and Brent Rooker and Jake Mangum and Ryan Gridley and those guys, man, I would love to talk about those guys. And then listen, if you want to talk about their national championship team, I would love to get into that as well. I mean, we certainly recruited so many of those guys on that team, and, incredibly happy for them and fan base and those kind of things. So yeah, I would prefer not to get into details and
That's not a problem, brother.
Just talk about not to, just talk about the great things that we accomplished there, if you guys are cool with that, man.
This is the Stingray Show, and coming up on this edition, we are going to be talking with a former Major League Baseball player who played also his college career at Tulane and is the all-time leader in games played, hits, doubles, and stolen bases. After college, he played for the New York Yankees and the Tampa Bay Rays, and he was the head coach over at Mississippi State. Former head coach Andy Cannizaro will join us right now on this edition of the Stingray Show.
Hi, this is Tim Brando with a reminder. Those of you on Tide 100.9, look out. You're about to feel the buzz of Stingray.
And with that, I want to welcome you inside another edition of the Stingray Show, and we have a huge guest on tap for you guys this evening. Like I said off the top of the show, he played college baseball at Tulane, and I left this part out. He was a two-time All-American at Tulane, and helped them reach the College World Series for the first time in program history. He was then the hitting coach and recruiting coordinator for 2 seasons under Paul Mainieri at LSU before becoming the head man of Mississippi State. Some of the big-time players that Coach Cannizaro coached include Alex Bregman from LSU, as well as Tanner Allen from Mississippi State and Jake Mangum. Please help us welcome to the Stingray Show former Mississippi State coach and my good friend, Andy Cannizaro. Coach, how are things with you this evening?
What's going on, guys? How are we doing today?
We're doing great, Coach. How's your night going?
Everything is great, guys. First of all, I want to thank you guys for having me on today. And got a text the other day from Stingray, and asking if I would want to be on the show. And absolutely, I told him I didn't even have to think about it. There was no hesitation, and certainly excited to be here today, and appreciate Stingray's support when I was at Mississippi State, and always there for our team, and vocal and outgoing, and tremendously honored to be here today, and excited to catch up with everybody, and let everybody know what we've been up to, and fill everybody in on the last 7 or 8 years. So thank you, guys. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely,
so
Coach.
You are now a scout for the Dodgers of Major League Baseball. How did that opportunity come about for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, guys, I feel very fortunate, to be a part of the Los Angeles Dodgers organization. And, I took a new job with the Dodgers back around Thanksgiving time. It's kind of a dual hybrid role with the Dodgers, where, half of my time is spent in player development, and the other half of the time is spent in amateur scouting. And so player development is really just a fancy term in the professional baseball world as coaching, right? And so I was able to spend pretty much the month of March out in Glendale, Arizona in spring training with the Dodgers. Spent the majority of my time with the minor league guys on the minor league side of camp, and had the opportunity to be with all those young infielders and great players that are anywhere from 17 to really 21, 22 years old, that are going to be the next crop of big league stars with the Dodgers. And so that was wonderful. And then when the month of March ended, I transitioned back into the amateur scouting role, and have spent a vast majority of my time up and down the East Coast. North Carolina, South Carolina, dipping into Virginia, covering Georgia a little bit, just doing everything I can to make sure I get the Los Angeles Dodgers on the right guys for the amateur draft in July this year. And, look to contribute as much as I can to the organization, and do whatever I can to bring as much value to the system as I can.
Awesome.
Coach, I'm a baseball guy. Grew up loving the game, played a little bit past high school. But for you, when did you know that you were good at baseball, and who was your very first favorite player?
Wow, that's a great question. I fell in love with the game at a very early age. Very fortunate and blessed to have a dad that was a great ball player as well. Played his collegiate career at Southern Mississippi, and is in the Hall of Fame at Southern Mississippi. So he is Southern Miss to the top every single day of his life. And, as I was growing up, he was a high school and college coach as well. So he was a 10-year high school coach in the Jefferson Parish school system down in New Orleans. And then after that ended, he was an assistant coach at Tulane University. So during all those years of being 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, I was bat boying with him every day at his high school team, was at every one of his high school practices. And then, at 7 and 8 years old, was bat boying at Tulane every day. So, I think just being around the ballpark every day, and looking up to a lot of his players, really did help me, develop that love for the game of baseball, and just worked at it every day, guys, and knew, ultimately, in the beginning, I didn't even know Tulane University had school during the daytime. At 7 years old, I just thought they played baseball every afternoon, and that's where I wanted to play ball. And, at 7 years old, I knew I wanted to go to Tulane, and, ultimately was very fortunate and blessed to be able to attend Tulane University for my college years. And that was really a no-brainer. There were several opportunities of great programs where I could have gone and played for some outstanding head coaches. But ultimately I knew that Tulane is where I wanted to be, and spent my 4 years there. And we won a tremendous amount of baseball games, accomplished a lot of great things there. I met my future wife there. So Tulane University holds a really special place in our heart.
Who was your first favorite player, Coach?
Oh, man, that is easy. Well, I actually had two of them.
Okay.
Growing up back in the 80s, before every single game came on TV and everybody was on television every day, there were really two games that came on every day. It was TBS, it was the Braves, or it was WGN, which was the Chicago Cubs. So at a very early age, I fell in love with the Chicago Cubs, right? And my favorite player was Ryne Sandberg. So
Rhino. Okay.
I loved Rhino. He was my favorite player. I collected every single baseball card that he had. I must have an album 12 inches deep of baseball cards and Ryne Sandberg. So he was my favorite player. And I also really loved Ozzie Smith as well. So
there you go. That was my favorite.
Always wished I could do the cartwheel and backflip, but was never able to pull it off like he did. But those are my two favorite players growing up for sure.
Nothing wrong with that. Coach, real quick. I wasn't a Cubs fan, but Andre Dawson, I just loved how he played the game. And my youngest child, his middle name is Dawson. My wife thought it was me being creative. It was after Andre Dawson, the Hawk. I love the Hawk.
Oh, I get it. When my wife and I found out we were having our second child, which was a boy, the name Ryne, Ryne, definitely popped into my head. So wasn't able to pull it off, but that's okay. His name's Pierce, and it fits him perfect.
There you go.
Yeah.
So, Coach, talk about your time as a player at Tulane, and especially that year that you helped guide Tulane to Omaha for the first time in program history.
Yeah, guys, I think so fondly of my memories at Tulane. And like I mentioned earlier, it was the only place I wanted to go. And I think I was the earliest commit to Tulane University in the history of the program. And I was very lucky to play for, which I believe is the greatest head coach in the history of Tulane athletics, Rick Jones, who just took the program from a more of a regional type program to a national program, and really put Tulane University on the map, and just had a drive each and every day to win, grow the program, hunt and fight every day for respect nationally. And that's what we did. And, was part of four, NCAA regional teams, two super regionals, and obviously in 2001, culminating in Tulane's first trip to the College World Series in old Rosenblatt Stadium, which was incredible. And it was just a really special ride. All 4 of those years were incredible. We had so many tremendous assistant coaches along the way that have gone on to do great things in college baseball as well. Our recruiting coordinator at the time is current University of Texas head coach Jim Schlossnagle. So Slosh was our assistant and recruiting coordinator when he was probably 25 years old. And so, just eyeballing him every day and seeing how hard he worked on the recruiting trail and making sure that we had great players on the field every day was really impressive. Our 2 hitting coaches were Rob Cooper, who went on to be the head coach at Wright State and Penn State, and then Buddy Goldsmith, who went on to be the head coach at UNLV. All those guys were tremendous college head coaches along the way, and we were very fortunate to have those guys be a part of those staffs over the years and just help us prepare every day. And like I mentioned, in 2001, culminating in that trip to Omaha, we were able to accomplish so many firsts for the university. And it couldn't have been any better in terms of getting there. We beat LSU in a super regional, which took place at Zephyr Stadium at the time. And it was 3 days of 15,000 people plus every day. Other than I think the Saints in 2009 winning to go to the Super Bowl, it was probably the coolest sports moment, I think, in the city of New Orleans, having LSU and Tulane battling for 3 straight days to go to Omaha. And, we were fortunate to win and beat a great LSU team, which was Skip Bertman's last year coaching in college baseball. And so, we beat LSU, we go to Omaha. We get to Omaha. We played an incredible first game against Stanford, which I think to this day is still the longest game in the history of the College World Series. I think it was almost 5 hours long. Stanford beats us, I think, 13-12. It was like 1,000 degrees in Omaha. President George Bush threw out the first pitch that day. So we got to meet President Bush before the game, which was a really cool moment. We lose to Stanford opening day, tough ball game. We bounce back 2 days later and beat Nebraska in the largest crowd in the history of the College World Series. I believe we beat them 5-4, something like that. God, it was 24 years ago now, which is crazy. But then 2 days later, we lose to Cal State Fullerton. We win 1 game in Omaha, but really felt like we accomplished a ton that year and helped pave the road. And 2 years later, Tulane was #1 in the country and back in the College World Series again. And God, I just loved every second of my time at Tulane, guys.
So, Coach Cannizaro, I know I'm probably jumping ahead a little bit, but staying with Tulane, in 2007, you were put into the Tulane Hall of Fame. What does that mean to you, and what was that day like for you to be put into the Hall of Fame?
It was a dream come true. It really was. And, when most young kids or ball players say, God, I dream about playing for the New York Yankees one day, or I dream about playing for the Dodgers, or all I ever want to do is play in the big leagues. That wasn't me. All I ever wanted to do, guys, was play at baseball at Tulane. And so it really was a dream come true just to play there. And then, have the career that I did for those 4 years when I was there. It was the coolest thing in the world. My 4 years there were amazing. I loved every minute, every day of it. And then to go into the Hall of Fame, like you said, in 2007, it was amazing. And it was a day that I'll remember forever. And it was just a culmination of a lifetime growing up as a Tulane athletics fan. And now to be a part of their Hall of Fame. I'll be in there forever. So I don't know. It was a wonderful time. I couldn't thank the AD, Rick Dixon, enough at the time, for the privilege of being able to do that and trying to represent Tulane athletics the rest of my career and be a great alumni for them.
Yes.
Coach, a fun 2-part question for you. Who was the best player you ever played against or with in college? And then also in MLB, we'll skip the minor leagues, but who was the best player you ever played with or against in college?
That's such a great question. Our teams at Tulane were really loaded, guys. But I would say the best player I played with at Tulane is current Mississippi State recruiting coordinator, Jake Gautreaux. Jake Gautreaux was our third baseman. He was an All-American. He was a first-round draft pick by the San Diego Padres. And he was a steady force in our lineup every single day. Was an incredible player, home run hitter, really good defender, a really good team leader. So he was the best player that I had played with at Tulane during those 4 years. And then, if we fast forward and jump to my time in the big leagues, guys, in 2006, I was on the big league team with the New York Yankees. And I'm going to go through our starting lineup in a second. And and that's going to give you the reason why that's a really hard question to answer.
That's why I asked it.
Yeah, gosh. So let's go with our starting lineup at that time, which did not include me, right? I was on the bench most nights watching these Hall of Famers play. Our starting catcher in 2006 was Jorge Posada. Our first baseman that year was Jason Giambi. Our second baseman was Robinson Cano. Our shortstop was Derek Jeter. Our third baseman was Alex Rodriguez. Our right fielder was Gary Sheffield. Our center fielder was Johnny Damon. Our left fielder was Hideki Matsui. On the bench with me every night in his last year of his career was Bernie Williams.
Mm-hmm.
Our starting pitchers were Mike Messina, Randy Johnson, Ning Wong, and our closer was Mariano Rivera. So when you asked that question, I'm like, I don't know. One of them, but if you had to hold my feet to the fire, I would say Derek Jeter.
Right.
Okay.
You know, Derek Jeter was the consummate professional every day. He showed up every single day. He was literally the first guy there every day. He was literally the last guy to go home every day. You know, just the way he went about his business every day. He was such a professional in terms of doing everything he could to help the New York Yankees win a World Series. His at-bats were incredible. Defensively, he did things that I had never seen done before on the field and made them look routine. And so I think the ease that he played the game with, I think a lot of times caused people to maybe overlook him and maybe look to the left and look at A-Rod or look at other guys that were, you know, hitting 50 home runs a year. But, you know, if you're talking about an American League All-Star and an MVP and all those kind of things at shortstop every day for the Yankees, there was no better role model to watch play every day than that guy. And it's something, it's so many lessons that I learned from him that I try to instill in our players over the years and try to instill to my 11-year-old every day that it's a left-hand hitting shortstop and has dreams of playing in the big leagues one day. And so many things that we talk about are things that I saw Derek Jeter do every day. And it was a true, it was really a pleasure to watch him get after it every day.
A quick follow-up to that, Coach, and I've said this for years. Randy Johnson, they got him down to 6'10". Is he really 6'10"?
I think he's 7 foot.
Okay, even better, even better.
I think he's a 7-footer. And I'll give you a really funny story.
Okay.
One day we came out in front of the dugout for the national anthem, and everybody's kind of standing, you know, wherever they fall in line, so to speak. And I stand there. He walks up, and he stands right next to me, right? And, you know, I'm looking, I said, oh, my God, look how much taller he is than I am, right? You're talking 7 foot to 5'9". And the anthem gets done playing. He looks at me and he goes, hey, do me a favor. Don't stand by me again for the anthem. You make me look way too tall. Okay. You know? So I hung out towards the end of the line with my other 5'10", 5'11" teammates.
I hear you. Well, the one thing I've been saying about Randy Johnson for years, and you're the scout, you're the coach. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm like, Randy Johnson, Hall of Famer, one of the best, if not the best, left-handed pitcher there was. But I said, whoever taught him how to pitch deserves to be put on death row and get the electric chair. Now, he was already unhittable, being 6'10" and coming across, but he threw sidearm. I was like, if he ever threw over the top, oh my gosh. Can you imagine the ball coming in? I mean, it'd be like dropping from the sky.
Sure. And the angle alone would be difficult to hit, much less the velocity, much less the swinging this breaking ball that he had. And then in the back of your mind somewhere going, this guy's just wild enough to hit me in the back and really hurt me. So I don't want to get too comfortable in the box here. Let him just throw something away, and I'll ground out to second base before I get hit. So yeah, he was intimidating. He was outstanding on the mound, and he was a guy that got better when he got to the big leagues. You know,
Mike Messina, nice looking guy, seems like a guy that you'd like to be your neighbor. He looks like he would sell insurance to you. Randy Johnson looks like he's a bad dude, like he's a one-man gang who can take you out. with or without a baseball. I
He'll
mean,
either strike you out or hit you, one of the two, and neither one of them's any fun. So he was tough, man, and he was every bit as impressive to watch in person as he was on TV. That's for sure.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
So, Coach, you were drafted by the Yankees organization in 2001 and played minor leagues until you were called up to the big leagues in September of 2006. What are some things that you learned in the minors that helped you once you made it to play for the Yankees?
Sure. I think that the minor leagues is about developing your game and learning how to compete against the best competition in the world. And ultimately, guys, you're going to have to be able to deal with failure. You're going to have to be able to deal with disappointment. You're playing every single day for 30 straight days. And after about 5, 6, 7 days in a row, that 31-ounce bat that you swing every day, it feels like a sledgehammer, right? Your body's exhausted. You hadn't slept well in days. You've been traveling all night on buses, trying to get to the next city, and then you're tired, you bus overnight, you go straight to the ballpark, then you're leading the game off against somebody that's well rested, that's been at home for the last 5 to 7 days, and that first fastball of the game is 97 miles an hour. You step out and go, I don't have any clue how I'm going to hit this guy today. So if I can somehow manage to go 0 for 2, mix in a walk, right, mix in a hit by pitch, something. If I can find a way to hit a ground ball with eyes and go 1 for 3 today, you realize real quickly, what you have to do every day to have success. And those 0 for 12s and 0 for 16s can come really quick, right? When you're playing every single day and you look up and you're talking to your best friend sitting next to you going, dude, I haven't got a hit in 5 days. What is going right? And then all of a sudden you start pressing and, so you've got to really learn how to deal with the ups and downs, and you want to try to stay as even keel as possible and learn how to eliminate the highs and lows and try to be at your best every day, even though you may not feel good, even though your body may be sore. You got to figure out a way to post that night at 7 o'clock and have success. So, it's as hard mentally as it is physically to play every day. And then once you get to the big leagues, guys, it immediately makes every bit of the blood, sweat, and tears worth it, and all the grind that you did on the long bus rides and, the time in the cage when you felt terrible and you didn't want to go hit, your body hurt, your legs hurt, you hadn't slept well in days, but you drag yourself there because you just know that ultimately my goal is to play in the big leagues and I want to do everything I can to get there. And my career is only going to last a certain amount of time. And, once you put that uniform on, you want to give yourself every opportunity to maximize your career. And you get yourself up every day and you get your butt to the cage and you get your butt to the yard. You get in the hot tub, you get in the cold tub, and you do what you have to do to play every day. And so you learn how to take care of your body. You learn how to get your rest. You learn how, your pregame work, your postgame work. You learn how to do the things it takes to have success. And when you get to the big leagues, like I said, it's worth every bit of blood, sweat, and tears. And, once they add that extra deck onto the stadium at the big league level, right? Once you go from a two deck stadium to 3 and 4, you want to be at your best every day when that game's coming on national television on ESPN and there's 5 million people watching your at bat. You're going, okay, all that stuff that I've done in the past has led to this moment. I'm ready, I'm prepared, and let's go get a hit.
So, Coach Cannizaro, what was it like for you in a quick follow-up when you got the message, hey, come play for us, the Yankees in the big leagues?
Yeah, wow. That was so that happened in September of 2006, or maybe the last day or so of August. So you're talking 19 years ago, and I can close my eyes and remember it like it was yesterday. Right. We were in Toledo, Ohio, playing the Toledo Mud Hens. And so the game had ended, and everybody is at their locker, getting undressed, going to take a shower, that kind of stuff. And our hitting coach at the time, Kevin Long, who has been in the big leagues for the last 18, 19 years now, with a bunch of big league teams. He comes and taps me on the shoulder. He says, "Hey, Miles wants to see you in his office real quick. I'm not sure what he has, but he's got something for you. He needs something happened. He needs to run something by you." I said, "All right, no big deal." Threw a pair of shorts on, threw my shower shoes on. I walked into his office, and when I get in there, he's sitting behind his desk, and our hitting coach Kevin Long is sitting there. And so I sat down, and I said, "Miles, what's going on, man? What's up?" And he says, "Hey," he's like, "Look, man, I need to run something by you real quick." He's like, "Look, man, you've busted your butt all year. You've had an incredible year here in AAA. You were selected for the AAA All-Star game. You've done everything you could possibly do, during this year, at AAA. You've established yourself as a everyday shortstop." And he's like, "Look, man, I just need to let you know, dude, that," and he kind of paused and he shook his head for a minute and he goes, "You're going to the big leagues, dude." And it was just this like emotion. Our hitting coach jumps up. He gives me this big bear hug. I immediately started crying. And our manager gave me this huge hug, and it was just this really cool moment. And to take it a step further, everybody on our team knew that I was going to the big leagues during the middle of the game. And so they had all kept it from me. And when I opened the door to leave the manager's office, our entire AAA team was standing right there. And it was this massive, celebration, like you see when guys hit walk-off homers. It was water flying everywhere. And guys were really excited and fired up because ultimately it was my first time in the big leagues, and guys were really excited for me. And they really, truly made that moment special for me. And, I immediately grabbed my phone and called my family, called my wife, called my mom and dad, called my brothers, and everybody's crying. Everybody's super excited. And then flew out the next morning from Toledo and met the Yankees in Kansas City, where I made my major league debut in the 8th inning playing defense against the Kansas City Royals. I checked in the game for Derek Jeter in the 8th inning and played the 8th and 9th inning defensively. I didn't have anything hit to me that night, and I prayed for 2 innings. Nobody hit a ball to me. I was so nervous. I was so scared. Stingray, if they would hit me a ground ball, I would have threw it in the second deck. I was so nervous. So I got through my debut with no action. It was beautiful. And then 2 days later, we flew to Baltimore to play the Orioles at Camden Yards. And I got back into the game in the 7th inning, checked in for Derek Jeter at shortstop again, and got my first at bat in the big leagues against the Baltimore Orioles. And I don't know if it was luck, if it was a godly thing or what, but I managed to get my first hit and my first at bat against the Baltimore Orioles at Camden Yards. And I can honestly tell you, Heath and Stingray, I was scared to death. My knees were shaking, hyperventilating. I couldn't catch my breath. And this is a great story as well. So my first big league at bat came against left-handed pitcher with the Baltimore Orioles, Brian Burris. My first big league at bat was his first big league batter faced, making his MLB debut. So I do my pre-pitch routine. I tap home plate. I give a couple little warm-up swings, and I come set to hit, and I look on the mound, and I know how nervous and scared I was. I was petrified. When I looked up at the mound and looked at him, his eyes were big as saucers. He was the only guy in the stadium that was more scared than I was. And so I'm petrified. He's scared to death. He's on the mound. And I see him just trying to catch his breath. And I said, oh, my God, he's as scared as I am, So he went ball 1, ball 2, ball 3. He couldn't, get on top of the baseball and throw strikes. So I said, I don't want to walk. I don't know how many at-bats I'm going to get in the big leagues. I don't want to be like Moonlight Graham, right? Where I got in, I got one at-bat, it wasn't official, and so it was like not in the record books, those kind of things. So I was begging. I said, please, for the love of God, throw this thing over the plate, because wherever the 3-1 pitch is, I'm hacking, right? So he goes 3-0 fastball up high, somewhere around the letters, and the umpire pumps it for a strike. I said, perfect. If he throws it in the ocean, I'm hacking, right? So he throws a 3-1 heater somewhere around my chin, a pitch that I would never swing at. I come out of my shoes and foul it straight back. Guys, we had an 11-pitch at-bat.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh,
nice.
He didn't want to throw anything other than a fastball. He didn't want to spin it. He didn't want to change up. He didn't want anything. He just kept pumping fastballs around neck high. And I kept hacking and fouling them off. And I was such in swing mode at the time. By pitch 11, I was either going to swing and miss or I was going to hit it hard somewhere. And Lord knows, on the 11th pitch, I barreled it right inside the third base bag. Manny Mota, who's playing third base at the time, dives, knocks it down, makes some kind of wild throw to first base high, safe, big league hit. They throw the ball out for my first big league hit, and my heart was racing. Kevin Millar is playing first base, and he knew it was my first big league hit, so he congratulated me, and it was such a cool moment, guys. Those are times and moments that I'll never forget ever, you know.
Wow.
Yeah,
wow.
Cool.
You know, Coach, one thing I got to ask you, and I've heard it a million times, and I would love to have the opportunity to put on any uniform, but they say it's something different the first time you put on those pinstripes. Wow. Is that true or not? It
really is. It was the culmination of a lifetime of hard work, culmination of making a lot of sacrifices along the way, and maybe not doing all the other things that all the other high school kids were doing at the time, and it was not doing the social stuff so I could go to the cage and put in my time on task, and spending my college years loving the game every day, and committing myself to the game and wanting to be the best player I could. And the first time I put on that New York Yankees uniform, it truly took my breath away. And probably would have cried if I wasn't in front of a room of 25 All-Stars and Hall of Famers and all those kind of things. So it was an awesome moment. I have my jerseys at home, and those are lifetime keepsakes for me, for sure.
Now, Coach Cannizaro, after your time with the Yankees, you went down and played for the Tampa Bay Rays organization, also in the big leagues as well. Talk about your time, please, down in Tampa Bay.
Sure. That 2008 Tampa Bay Rays team that I had a chance to be a part of for a short time, ultimately that team went on to play in the World Series that year. Joe Madden was the manager that had gone on to have so much success, and they were so young, and they had future All-Stars all over the field. They really took the league by storm that year. And they had a tremendous pitching staff with, big game James Shields at the time, and Scott Kazmir. I know I'm forgetting guys, but BJ Upton, Rocco Baldelli, Evan Longoria, so many young superstars that really took the league by storm that year. And, the biggest thing that I could take away from my time with the Rays was I was so impressed with our manager at the time, Joe Madden. And during my time with the Rays, listen, I was the 25th man on the roster. Make no mistake about it. And, every day I would come to the field, and Joe would go out of his way to have a conversation with me every day and make me feel like I was as important to the team as Evan Longoria or Rocco Baldelli or Carl Crawford or any one of those stars that were in that were in the lineup every day, winning the AL East. And, I felt every day like I was a contributing member to that team and felt like I had an important role. And that's how he made me feel every day. And so, I thank him at the time. And, ultimately when I got sent back down to the minor leagues from the Rays, I had nothing but great things to say with him in our exit meeting, and, how welcoming he made me feel there. And he goes on to ultimately, take the Rays to the World Series at that time and wins the World Series with the Chicago Cubs years later. And I wasn't surprised one bit by the success that he had managing in the big leagues. Total first-class guy, and extremely happy for all the success that he went on and had.
Coach Cannizaro, we had Tanner Allen on earlier this week, and he spoke very glowing of you and talked about how he followed you from LSU to Mississippi State with his recruitment and everything. But, he talked about the difference between corporate ball, or I think he said professional ball and competitive ball is what he called it. And I stopped him and I said, "Hey, I'm a baseball guy, but you need to explain that one to me. What's the difference between the two?" And he said, "You're not going to be rewarded, of you competing when professionally, if they got a lot of money invested in a guy, they're going to play that guy." And he just talked about how that was kind of heartbreaking at times, and he was on the other side of that at times, and it was kind of hard dealing with that. Is that something that you had to deal with as well? And I know the game is kind of taken over that and has kind of gone that direction, but do you ever see it changing?
No, I don't. I think I think he made a great point. I think professional baseball and college baseball are two different worlds, right? It's the same sport, but it's two completely different games, right? Everything in college baseball is geared around winning the SEC and getting to Omaha and trying to win a national championship, team first, team last, team at bats, trying to do everything you can, to help your university win as many baseball games as possible every year, right? Well, professional baseball, like I mentioned, is a completely different world. Everything is geared around trying to win a World Series at the major league level, right? And so, player development plays such an important role in trying to get those guys ready and prepare those guys to help a big league team win, right? And so in any given year, you're really only talking about, 3, 4, 5 different guys that are making their major league debuts at the professional level, getting from the minor leagues to the big leagues, right? And so two completely different worlds. And I think Tanner, hit the nail on the head in terms of, a corporate world, so to speak, and, one where you're trying to win as many games as possible. And so, yes, there's two completely different, dynamics in play when you're talking about the college game and professional baseball. Ultimately, guys, both of them are amazing games. Both of them are, some of the coolest things that you could ever do in the world, right? In terms of, playing at Mississippi State or playing at LSU and playing in front of those incredible, amazing fan bases every single day, 10, 12, 15,000 people on a weekend series, living and dying on every pitch. And then a year later, you're on a bus playing in front of 1,000 people in a city that you've never been to before, staying in not the greatest hotels or motels in the world. And, so yeah, it's two completely different worlds. And, both of them are equally as cool, but totally different in the same aspect.
Mm-hmm.
So, Coach Cannizaro, you made the decision at 31 years old in 2009 to go ahead and put down the bat and retire. What ultimately led to that decision for you to retire from playing Major League Baseball?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it was one that earlier in my career, I thought was going to be a really difficult one to do, right? I love the game so much. I loved playing every single day. I loved going to the park. It was just, what I love to do every day. And you were going to have to rip the jersey off of me type of thing. In 2007, I was in Major League Spring Training Camp big league camp with the New York Yankees. And I got hurt really for the first time in my life, in my career. I had a back injury that really came out of nowhere. It involved bulging discs and some torn muscles at the lower part of my back, and pretty much kept me out that entire 2007 season.
Right.
I was able to rehab, come back and play in 2008. But I knew in my heart of hearts, I wasn't the same player in 2008 that I was in 2006 before I got hurt. I had just lingering back issues. I was on the DL all the time with lower back issues for the next year or two. And so ultimately, by the end of the 2009 season, Stingray, I knew it was time. I knew I was spending more time in the training room than I was spending on the field playing. I was having to do everything under the sun to get ready to play every day just to make it through 9 innings. And so just being mentally and physically worn down at that time, I knew it was time to part ways with the game. And yes, it was difficult, but at the same time, I knew my time had come, and it was time to leave my spikes in my locker and get on with my life and get on with the next part of my professional career, which I knew wanted to stay involved in the game of baseball and remain in the game in some sort of capacity.
So, Coach, after your playing career, you were hired by the Yankees organization to be a scout and was the official representative for the Yankees at both the 2013 and the 2014 Major League Baseball draft. Walk us through what exactly your job was at both the Major League Baseball draft in 13 and in 14.
Sure. Right after I had retired in 2009, I was hired by the New York Yankees as an amateur scout in the Deep South. So my primary responsibilities for the Yankees were, all amateur coverage that dealt with the Major League Baseball draft every year. And I had, an area that I was responsible for every single day, which entailed Louisiana, Mississippi, Arkansas, parts of Alabama, the panhandle of Florida over to the timeline, and West Tennessee as well. So that was my area during my 5 years scouting with the New York Yankees. That was an incredible opportunity to go to work for those guys every day for 5 years. I had the best boss in baseball at the time, vice president of the New York Yankees, amateur scouting director, Damon Oppenheimer, who is still in that role with the Yankees and is still in charge of the draft every day for the New York Yankees. Just an absolute an incredible human being and an amazing talent evaluator and has filled those big league rosters with players for probably 15, 20 years now. And I hold him in extreme high regards and still keep in touch with him to this day and will always be a fan of his. And so, yes, during those 5 years, I covered those states, was able to draft a lot of great players over the years that went on to play in the big leagues with the New York Yankees and help those guys win a lot of pennants, get to the World Series for them, and very excited that I was able to play a small part in those guys' careers, drafting them during those 5 years with the New York Yankees. And then, like you said, in 2013 and 14, the New York Yankees sent me to New York to represent our organization at the MLB draft. Sat at the table for those years with, I believe it was myself and Willie Randolph with the Yankees, and ultimately, handled all the operations during the actual time of the draft, was in constant communication with my boss, Damon Oppenheimer at the time, who was back in Tampa where they were running the draft from, and was on the phone with him, getting his orders and directions in terms of, hey, here's who we're looking to take. If we don't get our pocket picked here with the pick before us, this next pick's going to be Aaron Judge, right? Those type of things. And so it was great. And it was a tremendous, tremendous honor to be there and represent the Pinstripes and Damon Oppenheimer and Brian Cashman, and being able to fill out that card and hand it to the commissioner at the time, who was able to read out those names and welcome those guys to the New York Yankees organization. It was a wonderful couple of days for those 2 years. So many Hall of Famers that were involved at the MLB studios during those times, and met a lot of great players along the way, met a lot of great Hall of Famers that I had watched growing up as I was a kid, and tremendously honored to be there and represent the Pinstripes. So,
Coach Cannizaro, you got your first action as a coach in the SEC in July of 2014 when Paul Mainieri of LSU hired you to be the hitting coach down at LSU for him. How did you get that opportunity?
So, that opportunity came about, via my job with the New York Yankees, right? Like I had mentioned earlier, Louisiana was one of those states that I covered all the time. And I spent a lot of time at LSU, right?
Yeah.
They had so many great players coming through the program, and spent a lot of time there because I knew, I wanted to throw my line where the fish were, so to speak. And, I knew big league players came from LSU, and I wanted to make sure that when my boss, Damon, had a question about, Alex Bregman, or he had a question about Aaron Nola, or, Mikey Matuk, those great players that were coming through at LSU at the time, that I had all the answers, right? And I knew those guys inside and out, and not only knew their game, but I knew the makeup of the player as well. And, so during those times, developed a relationship with Paul Mainieri at the time, and was in constant communication with him, about his games and about his teams. And, and ultimately that job as recruiting coordinator and hitting coach came available in 2014. And he had reached out to me, and he and I had met and talked about the job. And I knew somewhere deep down that I wanted to get into coaching. And as much as I loved my job, talent evaluating, I wanted to be able to evaluate talent and be able to coach them as well. And so everything just aligned perfectly. And the job at LSU came available. He offered me the job. I accepted the job and immediately got to work at LSU in 2014, hit the road recruiting, and couldn't wait to be able to coach, the next baseball team and all those good young players they had there. Like you had mentioned, Alex Bregman, Andrew Stevenson, Kate Savick, all these guys that went on to be all SEC performers and ultimately play in the big league. So, very thankful for my time at LSU. Incredibly thankful for Paul Mainieri hiring me, at that time, because that was certainly a job that a lot of people wanted at that time. And he thought and saw enough in me to entrust me to coach his hitters and trust me to go out and find the right players that had the talent to play at LSU and had the physical and mental makeup to be able to compete in front of 15,000 people at the box on a Saturday night. And so I loved my time at LSU, loved coaching those kids there, loved being out on the road, recruiting, representing LSU and what that brand, represented and the great times that we had there. Loved every minute of my time at LSU. I really did.
So, Coach Cannizaro, your first season at LSU was in 2015, and
Right.
you helped Bregman become the highest drafted batter in LSU history, going number 2 overall to Houston. Talk about that season that he had at LSU, and especially talk about that team's run all the way to Omaha.
Yeah, that was a really, really special team, and a special group of kids that really wanted to win, get back to Omaha and win a national championship, right? And it was no doubt led by Alex Bregman. And he really was a guy that slept, and lived the game of baseball. He was a guy that would come to the field at midnight and turn the lights on and hit by himself, and call me at 11 o'clock at night sometimes and say, "Hey, what are you doing?" I'm like, Alex, I'm sleeping, dude. You know, he's like, hey, is there any way you think do you think, hey, would it be possible? Hey, would you want to meet me at the cage? And so we certainly did that, you know, and, you know, there were many times we did that and hitting ground balls when everybody's sleeping at night and, you know, do those kind of things. And ultimately he was a leader. He was a winner. He led by example. And so happy for the career that he has had in the big leagues and winning World Series. And now he's doing it a second time with the Boston Red Sox, and he's off to a great start with those guys. And, you know, there were so many different guys on that team that had wonderful years. Andrew Stevenson in center field, Mark Laird in the outfield, Connor Hale, Chris Chinea, Cade Savick, Chris Shambra, who that year hit a walk-off home run to send us to Omaha in front of 15,000 people. It was an amazing moment by a kid, by a local player from Catholic High in Baton Rouge that is now a star and will probably never have to pay for another meal in Baton Rouge again after winning that home run. And we had a great group of guys and pitching staff led by Jared Poche and Alex Lang and those type of guys. And it was truly a special season that culminated in us getting to Omaha. We fell short of our goal of winning a national championship, but we were able to beat Cal State Fullerton and lost to TCU twice out in Omaha. But it was a special time with a special group of players and a season that I'll remember forever.
So, Coach Cannizaro, November the 5th of 2016, you got your opportunity to become a head coach, and it was the 17th head coach overall for Mississippi State, hired by former Mississippi State coach John Cohen. Talk about the process of going from LSU's hitting coach to the head coach of Mississippi State.
Sure. You know, when I got the first phone call from John Cohen about wanting to speak to me about becoming the head coach at Mississippi State, I was floored, right? I was completely caught off guard in terms of, you know, him thinking highly enough of me to be able to entrust me with that program at Mississippi State to be the head coach, right? And as we got into conversation, you know, he started bringing up a lot of different points in terms of the recruiting that I had done at LSU and the way that I had coached the hitters at LSU. And they had won the SEC at Mississippi State the season before and led the free world in strikeouts. And they had an amazing pitching staff with so many guys being drafted. And we were really the only team all year that had any type of plan and had any type of approach in terms of how we were going to beat Mississippi State and how we were going to execute against them. And ultimately we were able to do that. And I think that impressed him in terms of just being able to, you know, to have a group of hitters, you know, follow a game plan and follow approach. And, you know, saw John out on the recruiting trail so much that previous summer as he was trying to replace both of his assistants at the time. Pitching coach Wes Johnson had left to go to Arkansas, and Nick Mingione had left to become the head coach at the University of Kentucky. So, you know, when he wanted to talk to me about the job, obviously it was a job that I couldn't say no to, and it was an amazing opportunity for me to be a head coach. I was the youngest head coach in the SEC at the time. You know, looking back on it, Stingray, was I necessarily ready to be a head coach at a program like Mississippi State at the time? Probably not, right? In terms of just all the things that encompass being a head coach at the time, not just the time at the field every day or recruiting, right? It was all the other things in terms of, you know, that take up your time, right? And so, you know, I took the job and was extremely excited about it, and did the job to the very best of my abilities. You know, in 2017, you know, our pitching staff was absolutely decimated due to arm injuries from the previous season. You know, we had certain road trips where we took 22 and 23 guys on a road trip, right? Where we didn't even have enough people to fill up the plane, right, to go to South Carolina one weekend. And ultimately, we found a way to get the job done. We tremendously overachieved that year. I believe we were picked to finish 12th out of 14 teams that year in the SEC. We ultimately won 40 games.
Right.
We got to a super regional against LSU. And that 2017 season was such a memorable one in my mind, in terms of a group of kids that just wouldn't take no for an answer, right? They just kept fighting. They kept battling. They kept looking for ways to win. And we beat a lot of people that year that we had zero business beating. And, we win 40 ball games and end up in a super regional. And, I loved each and every member of that team for everything that they gave for that season.
So, Coach, I have a fun question for you.
All right, go ahead.
We just interviewed your former player, Tanner Allen.
All right.
He was I texted him this morning.
God, what a great player, man. An amazing player, an even better individual, and such a winner. God, I love that guy.
So, Andy, he wanted me to ask you about the time that you found him asleep at study hall.
Oh, gosh, I haven't thought about that in so long. Yeah, sure. One of the things that I always love to do is I wanted our players to see me in places, not just the baseball field, right? So I was either, hanging out with them in study hall or, going to sit with them sometimes in class. Just wanted to have a deeper relationship with our players than just head coach that you would see from 3 o'clock to 7 o'clock every day on the practice field type of thing. And so one of those days I was like, let me go pop in study hall. Let me go see who all's in there, making sure that they're getting after this thing. And, I want to have a complete program, right? I don't want to just be great on the field. I want to be great off the field. And I want to have a great team GPA. And we want to be involved in extracurriculars outside of the program with our players. And so I popped my head in there, and Lord and behold, I walk in and there is TA just out cold in study hall, right? I'm talking like head down, slobbering, like just studying was the last thing on his mind for the day. So I sat next to him. I kind of tapped him on the shoulder and I was like, TA, what's going on, man? And he kind of like, wiped his eyes a little bit, looked up and saw me and just jumped, right? Like, oh my God, coach, what are you doing here? So, yeah, I think he was a little scared. I think he was a little, shocked to see me in study hall. But ultimately, he was such a winner on and off the field. Yeah, he was a great student as well, Stingray, and graduated from Mississippi State, and he's as great of an ambassador as that university is ever going to have. He eats, sleeps, and breathes Mississippi State baseball, and he probably walks around with the cowbell every day, regardless of where he is.
So, Coach, talk about, because the SEC tournament is upon us.
Yep.
Talk about what it is like to coach in the SEC tournament up there in Hoover.
It is an absolute dogfight every day, Stingray. It is such an amazing event to see the entire league come together to, descend upon Hoover, every year. So many great players, so many great coaches. The stands are packed every day. Every single pitch is important, right? Everybody stays in the same hotel. So you're seeing all the other teams and coaches in the lobby at breakfast every day. You see them walking the mall every day. It's such an amazing event every year that, if a fan hasn't been to Hoover and you love baseball and your kids love baseball, you really need to go. Take your sons, take your daughters, take your family to Hoover for a few days and just kind of, get involved in the SEC tournament every year. It's such an amazing event. The league does such a wonderful job with it. Herb Vincent, Greg Sankey, they have knocked that event out of the park every year. And God, it is such a hard tournament to win, just even a single ball game in, and everybody has so much pitching. Like I mentioned, every game is a dogfight. And I've said for years that you don't necessarily win the SEC, you just survive it and outlast all the other teams, right? You're just kind of the last one standing. And, you get done with the SEC schedule, and anybody that makes a regional is capable of winning a national championship, right? Just several years ago, you saw Ole Miss be the last team that made it into the field that went on to win the national championship. And you are so battle tested by the time you get into NCAA regional or super regional or Omaha. It just really truly feels like another SEC weekend game. Right. So your players are accustomed to it. You've already played 30, 35 SEC ball games along the way. And so while other teams and other schools are hyping up every match along the way, it's just really another game for your guys. And they know how to play. They know how to win. They know how to play 9 innings or however long it takes to win the ball game. And that's one of the things that we always stress with our program at Mississippi State is, hey, we're going to be here for 9 innings or however long it takes to win this ball game, right? And we're going to fight you. We're going to scratch. We're going to claw. We're back then we were doing the Detroit Lions and Dan Campbell, bite your kneecaps off type of stuff long before he did, So it was boxing gloves and all those kind of things. And I just kind of wanted to, truly show our guys like, hey, whatever it takes to win this ball game, let's buy into it. Let's focus on it. Let's get this job done because it'll be worth it in the end. And that's what we're able to do. And we instilled that mentality in our guys. And like I said, you win 40 games in our first year of the program was a magical season, magical run for us for sure.
So, Coach, in 2017, the Bulldogs had to play in the Hattiesburg Regional and had to win 4 games in 2 days after losing that first game. Coach, what was that experience like from a coaching perspective of having to manage your team playing 4 games in 2 days?
Yeah, that was an extremely tough regional. Southern Miss had an amazing season, and they were ranked inside of the top 10. And I don't think they had lost a home game since like March or something like that. And so, we battled our way back through the losers bracket. We lost the first game against South Alabama, a really good team that year. And then we had to show back up, I believe, at 9:00 in the morning the next day. And, we hang on and beat UIC in a nail biter. I think Riley Self strikes out the last out of the game with the bases loaded up, 1 run in the last inning. And we were going to live and die on Riley Self that inning. And he had played such a big part of our season that year as a freshman. He had gone on to be a freshman All-American that year. And so we survived the game against UIC. We come back and beat South Alabama later that night. And so ultimately we'd set up a, last day of the regional where we had to beat a really good Southern Mississippi team 2 times, which was a really daunting task for us. And so we go out there and we start, I believe it was JB Billingsley at the time. And Billingsley goes complete game, which he had never done before, throws this incredible rise to the occasion ball game, and allowed us to get into a 1-game winner-take-all scenario against Southern Miss. And, the thing that I remember the most about that tournament was every time we won a game, our confidence as a team just continued to build and build and build. And so ultimately, there was some rain involved in that day as well. So, we play this great Southern Miss team well after midnight. I think the game ends around 1:00 in the morning. And we ultimately beat them 2 times in one day, which was an amazing moment for our program and our current team. And sent us into the super regional. It got us our 40th win of the season. And, it put us at 40-25 after a regional and sent us on the road to LSU to play in a super regional, which was an incredibly tough environment that previous weekend. And I was really proud of the way our guys competed in that weekend as well. LSU was, I believe, the #1 team in the country at the time. And we had the lead both times in that game in the 7th inning and kind of just ran out of gas and, just kind of ran out of pitching and ultimately lost both games to those guys. But I was so proud, Stingray, of our team, so proud of our players, of our leaders on that team. They really had an incredible season and one that I'll remember forever.
So, Coach, I do have one question about the 2018 season. If you would have stayed at Mississippi State in 2018, how much success do you think that team would have had?
That team that year ultimately went on and played in the College World Series. And, guys like Gary Henderson, Jake Gautreaux, Mike Brown, those guys did an incredible job leading that team that year in 2018 and brought them to Omaha. They did a wonderful job. They got hot at the end. And there was no doubt that, what we were doing at the time in 2016, 2017, was setting the groundwork for many years of success to come. And that 2018 team had a great season and ultimately led them, to that magical season where they won their national championship,
So, Coach, in 2021, Mississippi State won the national championship in college baseball in Omaha. Even though you weren't the coach of that team, did it give you a little bit of satisfaction knowing that those were the guys that you recruited from Mississippi State that won a national championship?
It really did. It really did. And obviously from afar, was tremendously proud of all those players that we had recruited and that we had coached along the way, that played an integral role in Mississippi State winning that national championship, right? And Stingray, one of the things that I'd like to say about Mississippi State winning that national championship is how happy and how proud I am for that fan base at Mississippi State to win a national championship, right? That was something that we talked about every single day in our program at our time there, that there was really one massive thing that Mississippi State had yet to do, and that was win the national championship. And that fan base wanted it so bad. And so for them to be able to win that national championship in 2021, I was so happy for them. I was so proud for our players that we had recruited along the way. And ultimately seeing guys like Tanner Allen, at 22 years old, win a national championship, when that recruiting process started with him at 16 years old, and identifying a guy like him that not only had the talent, but had the leadership and makeup ability to be able to lead a team like that. I was so happy for those guys, so happy for the fan base, for the administration there, to win that national championship. Was a culmination of a lot of things that Coach Ron Polk had certainly laid the groundwork and foundation for, and being able to hand that over to Coach John Cohen, and then the work that we were able to do there from a recruiting standpoint, from helping build that new ballpark, and to just creating a culture every day that guys wanted to show up every single day, compete, play hard for, and ultimately win that national championship for Mississippi State was something that I'm extremely happy for them that they were able to accomplish. Extremely happy for former head coach Chris Lemonis, who I think did an amazing job at Mississippi State. He was able to lead that team to a national championship. Stingray, that is so hard to do. Coach Lemonis and his staff did a wonderful job there. And I'm really happy for them and think he did a wonderful, amazing job at Mississippi State, and want to congratulate him on the job that he did there.
So, Coach, as we've talked about, you are currently a scout in the major leagues, but is coaching in your future again? And if Mississippi State would call, would you consider coming back?
No, I think my time at Mississippi State is done. I feel very proud about what we were able to accomplish on and off the field at Mississippi State. We certainly, we're leading the country in recruiting classes and nationally ranked recruiting classes. We were laying the foundation for many, many years of success that they ultimately had. Stingray, I'm really happy and proud of what we did off the field there with our players. Our first year there, we had the highest GPA in the history of the program in the springtime.
Wow.
One of the things that we were able to do was we implemented a mandatory study hall program like that you had mentioned earlier with Tanner Allen, that we had all of our players involved in. They weren't always happy about doing it, but it was something that I felt like was really important because, we were trying to prepare these guys for the rest of their lives, not just their 3 or 4 years that we're wearing, the maroon and orange at Mississippi State. And we wanted every one of our guys to graduate on time and to be able to represent our program in Mississippi State extremely well after graduation. That I believe that we were able to accomplish. We got our team and our guys involved in the local elementary schools that around the Starkville area. We implemented a reading program that my wife Allison, kind of spearheaded, and she was able to get our players involved. I believe it was every Tuesday or every Thursday. Our players were involved in those, schools reading to those children every day. And I was just really proud of the things that we did off the field, as well as winning 40 games and getting to a super regional. There were plenty more that I wish we were been able to accomplish along the way, but it just wasn't in the cards. Yes, I don't think I would be returning to Mississippi State as a coach there. But we have had several opportunities as a family to get back into the college game. We've had 4 or 5 different opportunities in the last couple of years to lead programs and to get back into the game as a head coach again. And ultimately, those were jobs that I had interest in initially, and met with the president and met with the AD and search committees, and were offered those jobs and came back and sat down at the table with my wife Allison, daughter Gabby, son Pierce, son Knox, and we sat there and kind of decided if this was something that we wanted to do as a family, right? And Stingray, it's no longer about me, it's about we, right? It's about our family and what we want to do, and it's got to be right for everybody. And the job that I have right now for the Los Angeles Dodgers is right for our family. It really is. And my scouting director, Zach Fitzpatrick, does an amazing job every day of being my boss and allowing me to get my job done and stay a huge part and lead my family. And so the job that I have right now just really works for us. And Zach has done a wonderful job, and Billy Gasparino and Will Rhymes and Austin Chubb, guys that are involved in the player development part, allow me to be a great coach, allow me to be a great scout, but allow me to be a great father and a great husband, and be present with my family. And so, you ask, would I be interested in returning to college coaching? It's something that we've considered in the past, and we would be, certainly willing to listen to different jobs and opportunities, and it would have to be right for our family. And, it would have to be right for everybody, because the job I have right now with the Dodgers is pretty dang sweet, man. And I love representing that Dodger blue every day.
So, Coach, talk about the success here, recently of one of your former players and how proud you are of Jake Mangum finally making it to the big leagues, please.
Sure. I believe they call him the mayor, right?
Yes.
Jake was a great player for us at Mississippi State and had an amazing career. And I think it's just a testament to what's in his heart in terms of wanting to achieve and be a ball player, right? The ability has always been there, right? Everybody in Starkville saw it every single day for 4 years. It just kind of took Jake getting with the right organization, the right time, the right opportunity to get his opportunity in the big leagues. And he has certainly made the most of it. And him being with the Tampa Bay Rays is the perfect spot for Jake, because it's an organization, that values his type of game every day. It values high on base percentage. It values a high level of defend every day. It values him being able to steal a base. All the things that make Jake's game what he does. It's allowing him to have success in the big leagues with the Tampa Bay Rays. I'm so happy for Jake. I'm so happy for his family, his mom and dad, and his sisters, and everybody that makes up that Mangum family. So happy for him that he's gotten to the big leagues. He's had success, and he's going to have a lot of time forward in the big leagues, and his big league career is just getting started. He's going to have a great career, and then he's going to be very successful in whatever he decides to do when his career is done. And he may move back to Starkville, like you said, and he may be the mayor one day. He may be the head baseball coach one day. He may be the athletic director one day. I think he'll probably be able to do whatever he wants to do in that Mississippi State family when he's all said and done.
So I've got 3 questions left for you, and then we'll let you get out of here, Coach.
Sure. Fire from the hip, dude. This has been great, man. I have loved reconnecting with you, Stingray.
Man, it's been a blast. Thank you. All right. So the first one, who would you like to see, and who do you think Mississippi State should go after to replace Chris Lemonis?
That is such a great question. And like I had mentioned earlier, Coach Lemonis did an amazing job, man. He really, really did. And, and he's not done being a college head coach either. He's going to have a lot of success at his next stop. He did a wonderful job at Mississippi State. In terms of their next hire, I think the job at Mississippi State has a certain make and model. It has a certain fit, right? In terms of, who needs to lead that program. And to me, I think there's 2 head coaches that come to mind that are currently sitting head coaches in the SEC right now that I think would be home run hires at Mississippi State. The first one I really truly believe Butch Thompson would be my first call to try to bring him back home to Mississippi State. I think he's an amazing fit at Mississippi State. I think he's an amazing guy that is rooted in his faith. I think he's a guy that can lead the program, that he's not going to get caught up in all the other things that go along with being the head coach at Mississippi State. He's going to keep his head down and do everything he can to be great at Mississippi State. So that would be my first call. And I think Butch is an amazing human being that would do a great job at Mississippi State. I think the second guy that would be at right there at the top of my list would be Skip Johnson, the head coach at Oklahoma. I think Skip has done a wonderful job. He had Oklahoma in the national championship series a couple of years ago. I think he would be another great fit at Mississippi State in terms of, loving college baseball, fitting the city, fitting the make and model in terms of, loving the game. When he's not in the game at Mississippi State, he loves to fish. He loves to hunt. I think he just would hit the ground running and be a perfect fit at Mississippi State. So Butch Thompson and Skip Johnson would be my 2 first hires. But ultimately, whoever decides to take that job at Mississippi State, I think will do a great job, and the people will truly support him.
So, Coach, you are right there in Columbia, South Carolina. Your former boss, Paul Mainieri, just took over South Carolina last year, and unfortunately, this year is having some growing pains because their record in conference is 5-22. In your opinion, what does South Carolina need to do in order to get competitive in this style of college baseball?
Yeah, first and foremost, I think Paul's going to do a great job at South Carolina. I really do. I think, he's going to need a year or two to build that roster and kind of get it up to SEC speed, so to speak. His current team this year in 2025, they were decimated with injuries on the mound early in the season. And so if you look at their record right now in midweek ball games, South Carolina is 13-1 this year in midweek ball games, right? So, they've got some guys that can play. They just don't have enough of them right now. And I think they're kind of outmanned on the weekends, particularly on the mound. They've got some really good position players. They've got a right fielder, first baseman, Ethan Petrie, that's going to be a really good draft pick this year. Center fielder Nathan Hall has had a wonderful year for them as well. That's going to go in the top couple rounds of the MLB draft. I think Paul is going to be, heavily involved in the portal this year, probably as soon as the season ends. It's not going to surprise me if year 2 and 3 for Coach Mainieri is certainly going to be better than his first year there. I think he just needs a year or two to kind of get guys that fit his system, get guys to kind of buy into how he wants to do it here in Columbia. Paul Mainieri's won everywhere he's ever been. He's going to win at South Carolina. He's not done being a college head coach. And I think there's a lot of noise around saying, maybe he shouldn't have got back in the college game. His time has passed, that kind of thing. But I think Paul, is going to win. It's going to take him a year or two, but don't be surprised if he has South Carolina back in the mix in another year or two.
So, Coach Cannizaro, the worst thing about college baseball is always the noise, isn't it?
Those message boards are real in the SEC, man, and they get hot and they get heavy. You got to win every pitch in the SEC. And if not, you go to the grocery store and there's some lady wanting to know why you threw a breaking ball in the third inning instead of a fastball. And why did you bunt in the second inning when so-and-so was coming up? And it's like, ma'am, I'm just trying to get some ice cream. I like ice cream at the end of the night. Just please come to the ball game tomorrow night. We're going to do our best to win. So you don't ever get away from it in the SEC. It is a fishbowl. It is a microwave league. And if you can't handle the heat, get out of the kitchen in this league,
So, Coach, this has been a blast. My final question for you, looking back at your entire games there at Mississippi State, which one that you coached in meant the most to you and why?
Gosh, that is a great question. I think there's two opponents that come to mind the most during that year at Mississippi State. During my time at Mississippi State, we were 4-0 against Ole Miss. And that is a really big opponent. And those are really big ball games. And, we swept Ole Miss in 2017 in Oxford. It was a really big weekend for us. And so being able to do that was a tremendous high for us as a program. But 4-0 against Ole Miss and Hottie Toddy was an awesome memory for us. And then the next one would be beating Southern Mississippi in the regional final 2 times in one day. That got us to 40 wins. It got us to a super regional at LSU. So those would be the biggest wins that I think that we had, was going 4-0 against Ole Miss, was going, beating Southern Miss 2 times in that last day and winning the regional, at Southern Miss, at Pete Taylor Park in front of their fans. And listen, I just, in closing, Stingray, I just want to thank you for having me on, man, and thank you for reconnecting. This has been wonderful. I just want to thank all the Mississippi State fans that supported us during our time there. I'm so happy that you guys were able to win a national championship. And I just want to let everybody know that, that we're doing wonderful. My family's doing wonderful. My wife, Allison, is amazing. My 3 children are amazing. We're rocking and rolling. We're heavily involved in 11-year-old travel baseball. Pierce is a left-hand hitting shortstop that eats, sleeps, and breathes the game. And my daughter's 14 going into high school, and I've got a 7-year-old in first grade that wants to be the next WWE Cody Rhodes, so life is wonderful. We're rocking and rolling, man. And just fired up that you had me on today, man, and had a chance to reconnect. Thanks a ton.
Absolutely, man. So as we walk out the door, we've got Hoover coming up in the SEC tournament. Give us a couple of sleeper teams that you're keeping your eye on.
Gosh, that's a great question. Well, hey, man, Mississippi State is playing really well right now. They're getting hot at the right time. And my former head coach at Tulane, Rick Jones, always used to say, there's nothing like a team on a roll, right? Yeah. So, obviously State, I think, is going to do really well in the SEC tournament. I think it ultimately comes down to pitching, right? Because if you're going to win that tournament, you've got to have starting pitching. LSU's starting pitching is really good right now. Their ace, Kate Anderson, is phenomenal. I think look for LSU to make a really good run. Texas is another program, like I had mentioned earlier. Jim Schlossnagle had coached me at Tulane, and I keep in touch with him all the time. So if I had to take 3 teams, let's go Mississippi State to stay hot. Let's go LSU, and let's go Texas. One of those 3 teams.
Wow. So, Coach, look, man, thank you again, and please let everybody know where they can follow you and keep up with you on social media as you do your stuff for the LA Dodgers.
Yeah, sure. So I'm not that heavily involved in social media anymore. But like I said, just let everybody know, man, that we're doing great. We're in baseball. We're working for the Los Angeles Dodgers and player development and scouting. Life is great. Life is wonderful. And don't be surprised to see me pop up at an SEC ballpark sometime soon.
So, Coach, I do want to give you a quick update on me.
Sure. Let me know, Stingray. Fill me in.
I am now a Mississippi State alum.
That a baby. Congratulations, dude.
Thank you, man. I went back in 2021 and got a broadcast meteorology degree.
Man, congratulations. Great for you, dude. You will be a great ambassador for the university. That a baby. I love it, man. Congrats. Yes.
Thank you.
You will be a great you will do your part being a alumnus of Mississippi State, and continue to scream Hail State from the rooftops, man.
Right. Well, man, this has been a blast. Have a wonderful time up in Columbia and over the East Coast as well, due to you scouting for the LA Dodgers. And we would love to catch up with you, hopefully, when we get to the time of Omaha, to get your breakdown of the teams there in the College World Series.
Stingray, I would love to do this again with you, and absolutely, man. It's been a pleasure being on, and we will chat soon.
All right, man. And Hail State.
Hail State, man. Hail State.
Right.
Watch him down the stretch.
All right. See you, buddy.
Stingray, see you, dude.
All right. So, guys, that is going to wrap up this edition of the Stingray Show. Really do want to thank Mr. Andy Cannizaro, the LA Dodger scout now, who was the former Mississippi State head coach and also the hitting coach for LSU under Paul Mainieri. This has been an honor to interview him.